Hey, this is Greg Berger, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Today on MWIRE Weekly, we discuss if Shia Labeouf has lost his mind, the latest Avengers, Star Wars, and DC casting, and a review of George Clooney's latest film, Monuments Men. All that and more coming up on MWIRE Weekly. Hello and welcome to MWIRE Weekly, the podcast dedicated to the movie week that was. I'm one of your hosts, Dan Clark, and joining me as always is Kevin Optimus Solo. How's it going, man?
Fantastic.
Long time no talk to, I guess.
It seems like it.
Yeah. We apologize for being off last week with the Super Bowl craziness and all that. It was a little bit difficult, but we're back and better than ever. At least
Hopefully.
I'd like to think so. And for those joining us for the first time or those return visitors, what we are at MWIRE Weekly is we begin each podcast with a discussion of what we've been watching recently. Then we'll move into movie news and then to our main attraction. And our main attraction for this week is George Clooney's latest film, his World War II film, Monuments Men. And then we'll finish up with our credit conversation and a look at what's coming out in the theater as well as DVD and Blu-ray. So starting things off here, we'll get into what we've been watching recently. So Kev, have you been watching anything in the past few weeks?
I feel like I have watched more than this, but maybe I'm completely losing my mind. Let's see. My roommates were watching The Lorax the other day, and I had never seen that. So I saw most of The Lorax. Did not catch the ending. But I don't feel like I missed too much. I mean, I guess it is what it is, but it just seems like a little too run-of-the-mill for me. Didn't really stand out too much. Outside of that, I saw from Redbox, I saw Las Vegas, obviously with Morgan Freeman and De Niro and Michael Douglas, etc., and Kevin Kline. You know, from the previews, that movie looked like it was going to be at least somewhat funny.
You think so with that cast?
It had a good cast. It looked like, hey, we're going to make fun of ourselves and kind of play off of the whole Hangover thing and do it like an old people's version, and it had potential. Not so much. I mean, yeah, they're good actors, so you can't complain about the acting and that, but it just wasn't funny enough. It was a little heavy on the sentimental and just try to play two emotions a little too much for me in that type of movie, and that's not what I was looking for. Maybe that's my fault for expecting more hilarity. But I think on Letterboxd I gave it like a star and a half. So yeah, I wasn't super impressed by that. Saw a couple movies in the theater. Obviously, one of them will be our main attraction, which I'll save that for later. The other one I saw was Labor Day with Josh Brolin. And I got to say that you have not seen that one yet, right?
No, I have not.
Okay. I enjoyed 85% of that movie. I like Josh Brolin as an actor, and you know his being paired up with oh goodness, I'm going to forget her name, Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet,
yeah. Great pairing. The younger kid also did a fairly good job. I thought it had kind of a unique story. Obviously, it's based on, I believe, a book of same name, possibly. So it had good actors that I was looking forward to, and I think they did some good performances there. I just feel like, and I don't know if, without reading the book, I don't know if this is the author of the book's fault, and they were just kind of translating that into the screen, or if they changed stuff, and if it's the screenwriter's fault. I would have to look more into it, but I don't feel like I will. But I just feel like they did this great job of setting up these characters, and there's some decent performances, and you kind of got a weird situation going on. For those of you that don't know what Labor Day is about, it's basically about Josh Brolin's character who has broken out of jail or prison, what have you, and has found his way into this single mother's home with her son. And it just kind of sets up this relationship between, basically this convict and this, two-person family and how they deal with that, et cetera. And I just feel like it was an interesting setup and everything, but I feel for the last 10 to 15% of the movie, they just completely abandoned every part of these characters that they had spent developing for the last hour and a half. And I just feel like the way the actions that take place towards the end and the decisions that are made totally go against what they had built these characters up as. And I don't find it believable that the characters would have made the decisions that they make in this film. And like I said, I don't know if it's the screenwriter or the actual author's fault. And they just, kind of got careless at the end. But it's almost like, I don't know, it's basically building something up really nicely and really well for, like I said, almost an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then just completely abandoning everything, all the work you've done towards the end.
Ugh, that's not very good.
So, like I said, I enjoyed 85% of it, and the last 15%, I just there's so many holes and so many problems that it would take me a long time to get into, and I don't feel like we should do that. So that was the other one I saw, and then obviously Monuments Men. So what have you seen in the last week or so?
I also saw a movie in a theater as well called That Awkward Moment. There's a review up on the site at geekcastradio.com, and it's, for those that aren't aware, it stars Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, and Zac Efron, and it's like a bro rom-com. It's kind of like a romantic comedy with more of like a guy angle to it, I guess, like guy Sex in the City in a way. It's okay. I think it is powered mainly by the three main actors. Even Zac Efron, I think is pretty strong in that. I think he's really getting away from that Disney status that we pretty much know him from. But it's just really just plot-wise, just run of the mill. Sometimes overly sentimental when it doesn't really earn it. I mean, the jokes are funny. That the three guys have a lot of great chemistry. You can tell they're just ad-libbing a lot and just having fun, and that's when it's at its best. But it just gets really predictable. You're always ahead of it, and you're just waiting for it to catch up. And I think it just could have done so much more with what it had. But the bad part is too is like it follows mainly Zac Efron's character. He's like the main character, but the other characters in it are so much more interesting, dealing with much more interesting stories than his. But unfortunately, I think it's Zac Efron, so we're gonna go his route. But like Miles Teller is great in it, and Michael Jordan's pretty good. Like I think he struggled a little bit more than the others because he doesn't really have a comedic sense as much. Like it doesn't feel as natural for him. But his role is a little bit more dramatic too because he's like dealing with a divorce, which was interesting. I thought they could do more with that because that's something we really, this young kid dealing with a divorce. Like I say kid, but he's like 27. But so it was okay. Nothing you need to rush out to the theater to see. Also, just speaking at Redbox, I saw a movie at the Redbox called Thanks for Sharing, starring Mark Ruffalo, Gwyneth Paltrow. Pink is in this as well. And the guy's name I had it down, but it escapes me. The guy who played Olaf, and he was in.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I'll find it while I'm talking. Yeah. And he this was pretty good. Like again, nothing super amazing, but a little hidden gem from last year. And what it is Mark Ruffalo along with, and Tim Robbins in this as well, and they're like in this AA for people with sex addiction, and it kind of goes into their lives, and it's a really great blend of truly heartfelt drama with a great bit of comedy. It meshes those really well. Pink was surprisingly pretty good in it. She did a pretty solid job. She doesn't have a huge part in it. But I also think it's one of not Zac Efron, but one of Mark Ruffalo's better performances. And he never really caught me as a leading man. I think he's good as like a side character or something like that. But he was pretty strong. He has a relationship with Gwyneth Paltrow, and their relationship does get a little bit unnecessarily quirky at times, or just some of the jokes that they're making back and forth, just a little bit too on the nose, a little bit too cute at times. But it's pretty solid. I was always a little bit surprised by it because it's really heartfelt, and it felt really real at times, and it knew when to stop being funny. Like, it could have been just really slapstick and really ridiculous, but it knew how to balance those out really well. So it's something if you're looking forward, because there's not a lot in the theater right now. If you're looking for something, I would advise checking that out.
I had a question too for you, and I don't know like the exact date that you saw this, but I saw in your letterbox that you also had a film that you saw so far this month that you gave a 5-star rating to. And it's an older film, obviously, that I have not seen yet. And that was the movie M.
Yes.
From 1931.
Yeah, Fritz Lang's M.
What's the premise on that one?
Basically, that is about it's about this child murderer who is basically killing kids in this German town, and the city's basically going crazy trying to find him. And what's kind of interesting about it is that you don't necessarily follow one character. It's really like the reaction of the entire town, from the police to the actual other like criminals, because what you see is like criminals are getting together trying to find the guy as well, because the police are, in order to try to catch him, they're severely cracking down on their business and stuff like that, because this guy's the killer, playing by Peter Lorre, and who's pretty famous for being one of the most weirdest actors of all time. He's in probably most notably he's in Maltese Falcon, and it's in a gorgeous film. It looks great. It holds up really well, because you realize when they're dealing with like child murder, and at that time, like, that's something that was never really approached. And Fritz Lang is notoriously one of the best directors of all time. And it's currently, how did I see this? It's on Hulu streaming. I was trying to knock off some of my biggest holes, list of shame type of stuff, and this was one on there. So
interesting.
And I think what really makes it work too is the story, and in the way it kind of turns on itself a little bit, because it's kind of similar to like something like Clockwork Orange, where you're given this character that does these horrible things, but by the end he almost becomes a little bit sympathetic without giving too much away based upon the reaction. But it's pretty cool. It's I could see some people, since it's old, it's a little bit slow, but I think what makes it work too is the direction of Fritz Lang. It's gorgeously shot, and then, like I said, Peter Lorre is pretty. He's just naturally creepy. Like you almost wonder, it's like, is this too true to life? Because the guy does look like a serial killer. So I would highly advise checking that out.
All right, I'll add that to the ever-growing list.
Yeah. That's the bad thing. It's like I purposely created like a list of shame, and then it never gets smaller. It only gets bigger.
I might have to have a whole episode about our list of shame at some point.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. So also on my list of shame that I watched Easy Rider, which is streaming on Amazon, and I liked it. I don't think it ages completely well. It very much wears its decade on its sleeve. It feels very much like a 60s like bad drug trip at times, because just with the editing, and there'll be a lot of times where you'll be in a scene, and then like in between, like there'll be frames of another scene kind of just jolted into that scene, and then you suddenly transition to another location, like as if like you're just moving along some bad drug trip. Easy Rider is pretty classic, obviously, with Dennis Hopper and whatnot. I didn't love it. I can understand its importance, though. It's one of those movies where it's like, okay, I'm personally not going to find this as one of my favorite films, but I can see how it kind of pushed film along, and it was experimental and did things and approached topics that weren't really being approached at the time. So I think it's like one of those. It's more of like an academic watch, because you're just looking for on that end more so than enjoyment. But I can understand why people love it so much. And I'll just finish off with this film. It's kind of a little bit related to Easy Rider in some ways. It's called, this is actually another 2014 film, currently available on demand. It's called 12 O'Clock Boys. I actually have been really looking forward to this because I've heard a lot about it, mainly because it's a documentary about this biker gang type of, not really biker, but more so dirt bikes. And this actually takes place in Baltimore City, where I live. And there are like these kids in the city who spend a lot of their time on dirt bikes, on ATVs in the middle of the city, just driving around and obviously causing a lot of havoc. And it kind of goes into that subculture, and specifically this kid named Pug, who is, young. He's about 8 or 9 when the film starts off. And he really wants to be a 12 o'clock boy, and it kind of follows his story along, and the issues between the subculture, issues between the 12 o'clock boys, and how that splits off with the rest of the community. And it was really good. I highly recommend it. I feel like I'm a little bit biased because it's, because it's something that I'm aware of beyond just this documentary. But it's available on demand, like I mentioned. And I think it reminds me of like a combination of almost like an updated version of Hoop Dreams, if you've ever seen that documentary, but kind of the opposite end of it, where instead of someone like trying to become better because of football or basketball, they're kind of being dreaming of something not necessarily as positive. But it's fascinating. It takes place over like 3 or 4 years as you follow this kid Pug, and it's just his transition and like seeing him start as this like young kid who's like pretty sweet, and then like turn into a really hardened and kind of sad person. It's a little bit depressing, and it puts a lot in perspective. So I would highly recommend that, because like I said, it's February, not a lot in the theater right now, though right now there's actually a decent amount. But if you're looking for something to watch, I'll throw that in. All right. Anything else before we take a break and get into the movie news?
Nope.
All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing the latest movie news. And when we are gone, apparently a lot of news happened, so a lot to catch up on. We'll see you in a bit.
Hello, pop culture connoisseurs. Do you gain a dark sense of peace when the guilty are punished by a violent vigilante? If so, maybe you should get some therapy, and then subscribe to Punisher Body Count, the net's best podcast concerning all things Frank Castle. I'm Dane Lamont. My co-host Jake Williams and I cover the good, the bad, and the hilarious on the Punisher comics, movies, and news. Do you like chummy co-host banter? We got that. You need to get your fucking
No, you need to
man.
fucking pay attention to the fucking movie.
You want kick-ass guest interviews? How about Mike Barron and Tom Jane?
No, I like a little bit of grit in my cigar.
You want carefully considered in-depth analysis?
I mean, yeah, just won Best Picture at the Oscars yesterday. I mean, it's no Terminator. It was still,
Good luck with that. Punisher Body Count, twice a month on Geekcast Radio.
All right, and welcome back. We're going to be getting the news like we always do, with a look at this past weekend's box office. And it's official. We have our first blockbuster of the year with the release of the Lego Movie. It kind of dominated the box office this past weekend, ranking in about $69 million. It's coming in second place. Not too bad for a solid opening for a World War II drama. The Monuments Men coming in with $22 million. And previously, the number one for the last 3 weeks, I believe, actually Ride Along finally was overclaimed and dropped down to number 3, followed by Frozen, and Lone Survivor still is up there, and Awkward Moment at number 6. What's interesting about Frozen is that with this past weekend, it also passed Despicable Me 2 as the number 1 animated film of 2013. I guess they still count it.
Yes.
For even though it's getting paid in 2014, they still count it towards 2013. So
those box office people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that the other day when they were like literally a few like $100 away from each other. And something else we might do, I guess, I haven't talked about this beforehand, but now that we're on a fresh year, we can track the yearly leaders as we go through. the box office. So we'll talk a little bit about the yearly numbers right after we talk about the weekend ones. But yeah, Lego Movie. Question for you: were you expecting it to do that good?
$69 million? Geez. No, not. I didn't think it'd do that good. I figured it would be number one, but I thought more would be like 45, 50. But $69 million for this time of year is pretty incredible. And
there's just all the like hoopla about that. Like it's just everywhere. People are just praising it.
Yeah,
I know they've already signed on for a sequel.
Yeah. I really want to see it. It was in this and Monuments Men was my anticipated movies of the year. So I haven't had the chance, and I always feel weird seeing a kid's animated movie by myself. So I'm like, I don't know. It's just I'm gonna be that creepy guy that comes to the animated movie. But hopefully soon I'll check it out.
You just got to take like a notebook with you,
exactly,
and then people will just assume that you're just doing a piece on it.
Maybe like a T-shirt, like
like wear like I don't know some glasses around your neck, like on the little lanyard ones, and get your notebook and like write in like a Sharpie like critic on the top of it.
Good idea. It seems like we're getting a lot of bombs this year. Also opening this past weekend was Vampire Academy and
Zombie Academy, Vampire Academy.
That'll be the
sequel somewhere.
Yeah, and that opened at number 7 with only $3 million, and no budget released for that. But I'm assuming it's a decent amount. And I'm actually going to say thank you, America, for not going to see that movie because, it's unfair to judge because I haven't seen it, but it's called Vampire Academy, so I'm just going to judge it on its title like you're not supposed to.
Are we nearing, or have we already now seen the end of the zombie craze and the supernatural craze and the undead craze? Has that peaked already? And I'm not saying it's fair to base it off of the 2014 films that we've seen so far, but if you look at Vampire Academy not opening very well, I tanked.
I forget.
There's just been a few of those types of within that genre that have done bad. Is that just a product of them being bad movies, or are we starting to maybe go into a different shift here as far as the mass appeal of? I know everyone still likes Walking Dead, and there's still remnants of that time period, but are we seeing a little bit of a change?
I think.
Or is it just bad movies?
I think we are seeing this happen. This like Twilight effect is kind of coming to an end because, like last year when we talked about all the bombs of 2013, how many of them were like trying to repeat what Twilight did? And I think it's a combination of the fad's gone and the movies aren't very good. Yeah, Twilight wasn't very good either, but I think it was just this randomness that happened. I guess we'll see with. It's probably unfair to call something like Divergent, that new movie coming out with Shailene Woodley. They're a little bit different, but I feel like we're moving away from the supernatural stuff and more going toward the things like the Hunger Games, and that's kind of taken its place. So,
right.
Yeah, I think it is over. I think the zombie thing is still going to be there because there's always going to be fans of zombies. But I think the whole vampire thing is just kind of, lost its luster.
There's only so many ways you can not retell, but there's only so many variations of that you can do, I guess, maybe. I'm not saying there hasn't been good ones. World War Z was fine last year, and it's still possible to do, a good film or a good TV series based on that. If you're doing it right, you can still hit that chord and still draw those people out. But I think the part of the phase that we're past is you can't just throw zombie, vampire, whatever, into your title and then just expect people to come see it.
Exactly. Some other notable things. The Wolf of Wall Street's crossed the $100 million mark. Lone Survivor has already been there, but since we recorded, also did. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to make note of?
Interesting to see. We're talking about maybe one of the first huge success stories of the year with the Lego Movie. But the bombs seem to keep piling up a little bit, and there was no kind of making up for lost territory for some of those films that had bad opening or bad second weekends. And then it seems like the list is a little bit piling up for certain movies. I mean, we talked about I, Frankenstein and how that's not even going to come close. We talked about that last week. Vampire Academy can join that group. One of the biggest drops this week, not that it should be a surprise at all, The Devil's Due, which also took a nosedive even more than it had before, almost a 70% decline. Luckily, apparently that film didn't cost any money to make. But yeah, it's just interesting. A few of the Oscar films now are dying back down a bit. You know, they had their little surge there as all the nominations got announced. I'm sure they'll still be making some money all the way through until, you know, the Oscars are announced. But they came back a little bit, which I think is also a product of a few better movies coming out now in February. You know, a few other choices, so people, you know, have those options. So that was interesting to see. You know, obviously it had an effect animation-wise because we saw Frozen drop again, even though it's still staying somewhat strong. We saw Nut Job drop. So obviously the Lego movie hurt that a little bit. Anything that surprised you overall besides the amount of success that the Lego movie had?
Actually, Monuments Men did better than I expected. I didn't think it would debut at number 2 just because, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a film that will appeal to a large audience, because World War II drama that's kind of about saving art, but maybe the cast or just the intrigue build it up. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me.
So as I said, besides maybe just looking at the weeks, I guess we can kind of track the yearly progress and the yearly leaders as we go through. Didn't think about it before because we were kind of entering at the end of a year, but we're starting fresh, you know, at the beginning of 2014. So it's going to be interesting to see how this list changes as we go along. And kind of to go along with that, next week we're going to give you kind of play a game as far as our own box office predictions. It's not movies that we're saying are going to be good or great or our favorites or anything. We're just going to try to predict which movies will make the most money. So I guess we can track that as we go out throughout the year. And since we've had our first month basically in the books, so far it looks like this as far as your top 5 go for the 2014 domestic gross at the moment. Number 5, Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, which is a total gross of $32 million. Then we have Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit at 44, The Nut Job at 55, number 2, The Lego Movie at 72, obviously just opening, which is why we were calling it basically the first blockbuster. And then Ride Along currently sits at number 1 at 105, almost 106 million. Thoughts on what we're looking at so far in 2014?
You can tell it's not a lot there. Wow. I'm assuming that probably by next week that Lego Movie will move into number 1. So I guess they're considering Lone Survivor a 2013 movie, because I know that's which makes sense.
Not on the list at all.
I'm geez, it makes me sad that top 5, 4, and 3 just Nut Job. That movie looks so bad. It just tells you just how slow we are right now. We're in paranormal
it'll
activity.
be like for those people that like WWF, or I guess it's WWE now or whatever. It'll be like tracking who has the belt, because I remember back in the day when you'd watch that, and it would be like one person for a long time, and then I got to the point like in the 90s or 2000s where it just seemed like the belt switched hands like every other time, and then you had someone like what was it, David Arquette or someone like that holding the championship belt. That's what I feel like the early part of the year is, where it's just every week could be another number 1. So right now it's Ride Along. I agree with you that we would assume next week, if we check the yearly chart, that Lego Movie will be reigning supreme for a little while. Or I guess you could look at it like a CD or like a song. How long can they last at number 1 before they get knocked off by somebody else? So we'll keep track of that. Anything else at all for the weekly, yearly box office that you wanted to look at?
No, what do you want to take us down this past weekend's headlines?
Yeah, we have some headlines to go over. Obviously, we missed a week, so we're not going to cover everything that's happened since our last record, but we will cover a bit. So apologies if there's a couple things here and there that might seem old to you, but we want to at least give you our thoughts on it. And I guess the first place where we have to start, which is more than just the initial story, but also kind of like we talked about with Paul Walker, some of the domino effects of it. So let's start obviously with Philip Seymour Hoffman's passing, and then the connection to what he had been working on with the Hunger Games. Obviously, because we're a movie news podcast, we will talk about that, and we're not trying to trivialize or make, not spend enough time or give him the respect that he deserves in this time. But we'll talk about the movie effects as well. So, what were your thoughts when you saw that headline?
I was shocked. I at first thought it wasn't real. Like, honestly, because I saw it like on Twitter, and I was like, that can't be real. So I Googled it, and then I found an article that actually came out earlier in the week where there was a rumor that he passed away, which wasn't true. So I'm like, oh, okay, good. He didn't die. It was just some fake rumor. And then like the Wall Street Journal posted it. I'm like, well, I don't think they would post it. So that at first it was like disbelief, and then I was just it sucked. Honestly, it's just like it almost makes you angry in a way, because it's just a crappy way for someone like that talented to go out. And it's just it just makes you realize like that guy had so much more potential, and just to kind of throw it away, and you don't know what drove him to that. And I guess maybe even the saddest part, it's not even the movie part, is the fact that he left. He has 3 kids and a wife now who are without a father. So that's probably even the saddest part of it. But it's tragic, it's just that's sad.
Definitely something that you didn't see coming. Like there's there's a lot of celebrity deaths throughout the year. Each year, and you have, I guess, different groups of them. You have those that are elderly or older that don't come as shock because you realize that their age, etc. And then you have like the ticking time bomb type thing. Like, I'm not trying to make light of this, but if Charlie Sheen were to die or something like that, you kind of the writing's already been on the wall. So maybe it doesn't come as quite of a shock. But then there's these ones that, for me at least, not knowing him, not being someone that was in the inner circle or whatever that might know what's going on with him, but just to kind of like the common person, these types of individuals who just kind of hit you out of left field. And it's just something you don't expect, and it's something, they're not necessarily old, you don't realize that they had issues or demons that they were working with, etc. And it's just like, what? You just don't expect someone like this to just be gone all of a sudden. So it's definitely sad, and like you said, especially for the family that he leaves behind. Relating it back to the movie news that we cover on a weekly basis is obviously the effects that the next Hunger Games will have, since that was the most major blockbuster film that he had been working on. And the interesting part is that he wasn't done with that. According to the executives at the company there was one major emotional scene left to shoot for him, and now obviously they are trying to come around some type of way to get around that. According to that same executive, this is a quote, his performances in the movies will be up to the best of his craft. We feel it will be a good tribute to him. We're going to have a couple of workaround issues, but the movie will be creatively whole. And then continuing the quote, you can do digital things, you can have conversations where you're not focusing on him, but the people he's talking to. It kind of, if it is what they're calling a major emotional scene and he's not there to give his brilliant touch to it, it's a shame. And it's gonna, I can't see it being anything but, when I'm watching that scene, to kind of be left a little, man, what could this scene have been type situation, or how much better would this have been if he was able to put his mark on it. But I guess it'll be an interesting thing to watch as far as the buzz that comes around that next Hunger Games film.
Yeah. I hope they don't do the digital route or something like that. From what I'm hearing, I think that would be a mistake. I'd say either rewrite it with a different character or something like that, just because it would, I don't know, I just fear what it would be like if it was done digitally. I mean, look at something like Jeff Bridges and like the Tron sequel, when they tried that, it just did not work out. Maybe the technology's better, but still, it just would feel, I don't know, it would feel off off-putting, I think, even if they did it that way, and it looked better. But I don't know. I mean, that's the sad part too. Beyond that, it's just this how much work he had left to do, and it's just not going to happen now.
So I guess we'll have to see how they do that, and hopefully they can find a tasteful and a way to be respectful to both the movie that they're shooting and to the individual that was involved there. Shifting modes here a little bit, let's talk about something we always talk about. Let's talk about some comic book stuff. Captain America, the rumor about it, that the Winter Soldier film will have a post-credit scene that may directly tie into Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. The rumor being that they will let Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch show up in that post-credit scene, possibly. Which I find it interesting in the article that they feel the need to point out that if they do that it would be Marvel's way of possibly getting Quicksilver on screen before Fox gets their version on with X-Men Days of Future Past. That's completely, to me, besides the point. But what are your thoughts of the kind of revealing an early tie-in to the next Avengers film?
I mean, I would assume so in some ways. If you look at Thor, I felt like that end credit scene was more, I guess not even end credit scene, it was like mid credit scene. I didn't feel like that was leading into the next Avengers. I almost felt like that was leading more into either Guardians or like Avengers 3. So it seems like it's on point for what Marvel has done up to this point. For them to I guess not shoehorn in, but for them to throw in Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch first. I could see them doing that just to kind of, hey, one up them. As long as he looks better than the pictures I've been seeing of Quicksilver in the new X-Men movie, because he's not looking all that great there. So they don't have much to beat. So.
All right. Shifting to our next piece of news here. I find this one interesting. Talks of a new franchise that might be about to be birthed here. Guy Ritchie, this is the headline here, Guy Ritchie in talks for 6-film series about King Arthur. Warner Brothers had plans for a King Arthur movie for many years. So the idea here is that we have a kind of a launching pad, so to speak, of a possible 6-film deal here with involving Guy Ritchie and the Arthurian legend. What are your thoughts? Are you a fan of the King Arthur lore and then those types of stories? Do you think this is something that's needed, something that could be done well, or is this doomed?
I feel like it's almost trying to make up for the fact that The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are over or something like that. I'm not a huge King Arthur person. I mean, I like the legend. I mean, I actually even like that the King Arthur movie that came out in like 2004 or so with Clive Owen. I thought that was okay. Like a poor man's Lord of the Rings. Right. I don't know, 6 movies for King Arthur. That seems like counting your chickens before they're hatched type of thing.
Seems like, I don't know, it's almost like, I don't know. With King Arthur, I am a fan of King Arthur and that type of, the legendary stories and all the stuff that goes around with it, but it's been done so many different ways and so many times now that like you said, to bite off a 6-film type of deal might be something hard to live up to.
Yeah.
I could see them doing, I don't see what the problem is just doing like a one type of film and seeing how it goes and either leaving it open to do more, or maybe they're thinking if they come out right off the bat and say that it's going to be this big franchise and try to build it up like that, maybe it'll help them out. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, if you're going to do 6 things, like, why not do like a mini series or something?
Yeah, it sounds more to me like an HBO or a Showtime type thing.
Yeah, that 6 movies. I mean, even. Yeah, just to start something from scratch and go to strict 6 movies. That's not really. Yeah, it's based upon King Arthur, but it's not like it's in the common. People know of it, but it's not like a huge rabid fan base for King Arthur right now that's gonna, clamor to go see it. So that to me is a huge risk to try to do something like that.
I agree. All right. Well, what else is a huge risk? Possibly. Letting Shia Labeouf anywhere near your movie. Has the man lost his damn mind?
I think it's just an act. I think it's like you remember when Joaquin Phoenix kind of went crazy with the with the beard. And I don't know. I just feel like he's trying to be like avant-garde and like shocking, but he's not even good at that. So it's like I don't hate Shia Labeouf. I thought he's fine. I think I find him funny sometimes. I know people hate him in the Transformers films, but to me he's by far the most egregious thing about those movies. But I don't know, maybe just child star who's been in the limelight for too long and just kind of reacting towards it again. I don't know.
And for those of you who don't keep up, I guess, on the Shia LaBeouf news feed, this is all stemming from accusations of his plagiarism. And you can look into that and get all kinds of information. But, basically he was accused of plagiarizing someone else's work. At first, and I haven't kept up super well, so I apologize if I'm sounding like an idiot here. But at first he denied that, and then I believe at some point then he kind of somewhat acknowledged parts of it, and then he just kind of went on to just be very weird about it. He's like tweeting stuff about it nonstop. He's doing everything he can to make it more in the public's eye, I guess. And now his latest thing was, on a press conference for the Nymphomaniac movie that's coming out this year, the 2-part film. He walks out of the press conference. He shows up with a paper bag on his head that says, "I am not famous anymore," and just has 2 eye holes in it. He continues to try to have somewhat of a communication or interaction with the person who wrote the novel that he was supposedly plagiarizing. And now it's kind of leaking over into other celebrities that are commenting. I know Bill Murray recently made a headline because he kind of called him out and said that he was an idiot. So we might have some Shia LaBeouf, Bill Murray back and forth here. I don't know, but
I'll take Bill Murray.
Yeah, it just seems like he's either putting on this entire act or he legitimately is somewhat off his rocker.
Yeah, he apologized, but he plagiarized his apology, and then
right, and then he keeps everything he does, like all his tweets or everything that his quotes that he's using or whatever, all are very carefully picked out to be connected to the idea of plagiarism or this, that, and the other. So it's like he's not dumb. He's trying to be very clever in a way, or like you said, he's putting on an act. One of the two. I don't know.
I think he's even said, he's like, "Oh, this is like performance art." I'm like, okay, it's not very. It's just. I mean, I guess you got to give him credit for the fact that he is successfully getting people's attention. So. I mean.
All right. So you can definitely weigh in on your thoughts on what exactly is he doing, and is he? The other thing that might be interesting to see is he really hurting his career, as far as will this scare people off from connecting, bringing him into their projects or their movies, or is this just stuff that'll make him more popular and maybe get him more deals? I don't know. Be interesting to see that. On a completely different note, Elton John. We've had seems like a recent turn and a lot more people willing to do, adapting musicals or Broadway plays into film. And it looks like Elton John is trying to turn Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat into a movie. Thoughts on that possibility?
It seems fitting with, Noah this year and Exodus that I know it's not necessarily, it's more of a take because it's a musical, but hey, I think you're probably a bigger musical fan than I am, but Elton John's certainly a musical genius. So,
yeah, apparently it's coming from the same studio or company that did Romeo and Juliet, and I never saw that, so I'm not sure what kind of connection that even has or how they're involved in that. He did
a song for that actually was, I think, nominated for an Oscar. So
okay,
so they do have a past relationship. That movie was actually a million times better than it deserved to be. So
we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we have obviously Jersey Boys and Into the Woods happening this year. We have possibility of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat coming. I know there's been rumors for at least a decade it on Wicked eventually being turned into a film. We'll see if that ever happens. So it's just interesting, with the success of Chicago and then, Les Mis and a couple of these other ones, how that genre moves forward. And it seems like there definitely is an audience for it these days. So that should be interesting to see how that develops. As far as another headline that just kind of popped up in the last little bit here, this, I guess, is like a reverse casting call headline because it's news about someone who won't be in a film, possibly. And that would be Independence Day 2, which we've talked about in previous weeks' episodes. Apparently, Will Smith will not be back for Independence Day 2. Is that a vital piece of the puzzle for them doing this film? Does that kill the film? I know that we had rumors that we talked about like a couple months ago that they had done 2 scripts, one that included him and one that did not. But don't you have to have Will Smith in an Independence Day 2 film?
I would assume so. I don't think it kills it completely. I think you can still do it, but I don't think it's going to feel very different without him there. I don't know. It's going to feel...
Apparently, Goldblum and Bill Pullman will be in it, but now they're saying that it's possible that they'll go playing off of Smith's grown-up son. In this
is it going to be Jaden Smith?
No. But that would be hilarious. And that would kill the film.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wish he would do it because I want to see him in those movies again. To me, I think that's what that movie broke him into a huge star. I know he did Fresh Prince, but I think that made him into a movie star. So I think he'd be grateful enough to come back to it, but maybe he's just doing other things.
Could be. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like you said, that is kind of one of the films that thrust him onto the stage as far as a legit actor. So it's weird that he wouldn't want to be connected to it again, but you can't necessarily always blame people for not wanting to be, parts of sequels, remakes, reboots, etc., because there could be a lot more to it. Speaking of sequels, remakes, and reboots and all this kind of stuff, some announcements of some sequels that are now getting the green light that we can expect to see here, and see what kind of reactions you guys all have to these films being given a sequel. First of all, the one that we already talked about a little bit, and that would be the Lego Movie has now been greenlit to have a sequel, and Warner has hired the writers for that sequel. Obviously, I have not seen the film yet since it's just now out in the theater. But what are your thoughts on the Lego Movie becoming kind of like a franchise?
I mean, it makes sense if there's so much you can do with that universe. Like, I myself haven't seen it, but it's making a lot of money, getting amazing reviews. So it seems, I don't think you can make a successful animated movie and not make a sequel. So.
All right. So, and then another one that is now confirmed from this article, possibly at least, and they're even giving a date for it, and that would be a Guardians of the Galaxy sequel. They're saying Guardians of the Galaxy 2, possibly planned for 2016, could go head-to-head with Batman versus Superman. See, we worked it in there. Marvel always has the slate that kind of goes into the, if you check like a coming soon or like a listing of future things, you'll always see like these untitled Marvel project. Some of the animated companies do that too, where it's like, oh, this will be some type of Disney film. We don't know what yet, but there will be a Disney animated film this month of this year. Well, Marvel kind of does the same thing. So they're kind of looking at the fact that Marvel has a slate there in May of 2016, which would put it against Superman and Batman, and the guesses, I guess, are going that it possibly could be a Guardians of the Galaxy sequel before we know if the first one even succeeds or not. First, I guess, is it, again, counting the chickens before they hatch, already starting to talk about a sequel for this film? And second, if they do, is it wise or not wise for them to pit that against Batman versus Superman?
I think it's unwise to put it for Batman versus Superman. That I would assume they're going to move it. Like I think they're trying to play chicken, assuming maybe Batman versus Superman gets delayed again or something. But I think it would get crushed. Maybe if it was like Avengers or something, they'd have a better chance. But I guess Guardians of the Galaxy is the one that I'm I'm excited for it, but I'm wondering if how big of a financial success it's going to be. So I'm a little bit surprised that they're already greenlighting or thinking about a sequel. And I was kind of hoping that they would go into like some new properties, and do you have Black Panther, you have Doctor Strange they've been talking about, but it doesn't seem like those are getting announced at all. So a little bit, I don't want to say disappointing, because I guess it's a good thing that they feel strong enough that they're going to make a sequel, but I was just hoping they would kind of widen their scope a little bit with more characters.
We will have to see. Like I said, it's all rumors at this point, and we're looking a little bit too far into the future to get too much information, and obviously a lot of stuff can change. So we'll see if that Marvel project turns out to be that or something completely different. As far as other sequels go, and I'm just quoting the news article here, but Amazing News. And if you don't get that tie-in, you will hear shortly. Anna Kendrick and Rebel Wilson have signed on for Pitch Perfect 2, which will also represent the directorial debut of Elizabeth Banks, who was in the first one as a producer and an actress. Apparently the original writer is also going to be involved with this. So there's some consistency there. Pitch Perfect was a good film in my opinion. I guess we have an audience for something like that with a sequel. I don't know if it's necessary, but I don't know. I like Anna Kendrick and Rebel Wilson, I guess.
Yeah. I like Pitch Perfect too. I'm not gonna lie. Sure. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's successful enough that they want to make a sequel. It's a cheap movie to make, and
right.
I'm more Anna Kendrick, the better, I guess. So.
There we go. And let's not just talk about second films. Let's talk about some third films. For those that love sequels, you always got to like the third film in the series here. We got a set of 3, amazingly enough. Marvel apparently has also set writers in place for Thor 3, which would be Craig Kyle and Christopher Yost. Who apparently Christopher Yost did do some script work on the last Thor film. And Craig Kyle is not a stranger to Marvel animated films, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But as far as how many are we expecting of all these different properties? I guess I never thought about how many. I understood that they were going to go the Avengers route, and we were going to have multiple Avengers films, and we were going to have other films in between it. I guess I never thought about how many are we going to have, how many Thor films are we going to have, how many Captain America films are we going to have, how many Hulk films are we going to have.
I'm thinking they're stopping at 3, because I feel like they're not. I mean, they're done with Iron Man for the most part for individual movies. It seems maybe that's the magic number, and then they go from there. But I guess the Thor, based upon the ending of the last Thor movie, it seems like they would have to do another Thor movie. So, yeah, like I'll just go back with what I said before. I think these movies would be good. I'm just hoping. I would just wish they would branch out to new characters.
Which might echo your thoughts here on this next one, because not only will there be a Thor 3, but there's also going to be a Captain America 3, and Anthony and Joe Russo are set to direct that. Even though the second one hasn't hit theaters yet. And it says that the third one hasn't been green lit, but that they're still kind of pegging these two, who are obviously the ones involved with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, to do a third one if that is something that goes forward with it. So I just basically have the same thoughts. I guess I didn't realize how are they just going to do 3 of everybody except for Hulk. Apparently Hulk only needed 1. So I don't know. This one's a little different. I mean, because at least the second Thor has already been in theaters, whereas the second Captain America has not. I don't know. Like you said, I think hopefully they're not going to try to do more than 3 for anybody.
No, I get the good thing, I guess, is the fact that they're bringing in the same directors for Cap 3. That to me means that they had faith in the second one, that it was a good movie. So hopefully that means that it'll live up to expectations.
And just in case you haven't got enough news about the sequels, we got a couple more for you here. Taken 3, because the second one was so good. And the person being connected to this one, apparently Forrest Whitaker, in talks to be involved in Taken 3.
Just don't do it. No.
Yeah, apparently even Liam Neeson was not necessarily wanting to do Taken 3 until they, according to the article, threw a huge bag of money his way. And then he decided that it might be worth it. And it says, according to the article, Forrest Whitaker is in talks to star in the film. He will be joining Neeson and most likely Neeson's daughter from the previous two films. I can understand if the second one did well or was well received, because a lot of people liked the first one, but the second one, wasn't that just kind of a universal tank?
No, I think it did actually really well.
It did well money-wise?
Yeah, it was a big box office success. So,
man, I think the world will look back at this decade in films, and we will find out that there was many more than just 3 Takens.
I could see. I don't. Who's left to take? They've taken the daughter. They've taken Liam Neeson. I guess they're going to take Forrest Whitaker now. I don't know. Just
some random character that didn't exist in the other films. Wait, that was my best friend from high school. Can't take him.
They're going to take his dog. That's the next one.
There you go. I haven't touched his animals yet.
That's when it gets serious. So.
Don't mess with someone's dog. And then kind of a late addition to our news talk today, which fits into the sequel category. Apparently Joel Silver is in talks for a new Escape from New York trilogy.
Again, it's just like, why? Just like
Sorry.
It just seems again, like, you haven't made the first one yet, and why do we start with trilogies? You can't just have a deal for one movie. You need to have a deal for a trilogy or 6 films.
That's apparently the only way to get people around it. I mean, I could see maybe something that has something as broad of a base as like with King Arthur, that maybe you would have enough to explore there. But to even think that you are going to be able to do 3 films from the Escape from New York franchise is doing some type of wishful thinking there.
Yeah.
I can predict that right now. If that goes, and if that actually gets greenlit and everything goes ahead, that will be a trilogy that ends after the first movie.
Yeah. It's like it's like where the movies have become like Sam's Club, and you can only buy in bulk. So it's like,
yikes! People, please don't support stuff like that, because that will just mean more bad stuff for us down the line and less original stuff. And it's just, I don't know, like, I understand some things being remade, and I guess this is a conversation you always have with remakes and reboots, but just some stuff has you scratching your head thinking, why do they think that's going to be popular with today's audience? Anyways, enough sequel talk. That is plenty for now. How about some casting talk? First off, we have well, let's start with some Star Wars talk, because we haven't talked about Star Wars yet today. The latest person connected to Star Wars Episode 7 is none other than Gary Oldman. He's done The Dark Knight. He's done Harry Potter. He's been involved with now Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Can this guy really be involved with another big franchise and be included in the Star Wars cast?
Oh, of course. I mean, he's such a dynamic actor that he could pretty much do anything. Like, I think he'd make an awesome villain. You know, he's a great villain actor. But yeah, I'm completely for throwing him into a franchise film, because he brings, I think, a lot of gravitas to any role he's in.
I guess the interesting thing as far as Star Wars fans and movie fans here would be that this would be one of the first people that's been connected that's not a member of the old cast. I mean, we've had rumors and people that have been talked about, et cetera, but this seems to be the most substantial name that's not denying it. Because so far we've had, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, Billy D. Williams, Anthony Daniels, all the classic, original trilogy figures that have been connected to it. But Gary Oldman would be one of the first big names, outside of that original cast, and they could have done much worse. So, nothing bad so far as things that I've heard about the Star Wars film so far. We'll see how long that can last. I always like rumors about her because I'm a fan. Evangeline Lilly is apparently in talks to join Ant-Man, in line to play Paul Rudd's love interest. Are you a fan of Lilly, and do you think she could play a part in the Ant-Man film?
I mean, my only experience with her for the most part was in The Hobbit, and I thought she was good in that. I know a lot of people had issues with that character, but I thought her performance was still pretty good. And I guess the question is, if she's playing the love interest, will it be the Wasp, which is the love interest of Ant-Man, which I could see. So I do like her. I do think she's a very fun presence, and from what I saw of, she was in Lost, correct?
Yes.
I think when I did watch Lost, I didn't finish that series. I thought she was good in that too. So
that is a whole topic for another day. Let's just try to get all the superhero stuff. We're just going to feast on superhero news for a while. Hopefully people don't hate us for it. Next casting as far as superhero goes, and again, some of this will be old news to some people, newer news to other people, but Paul Bettany cast as the Vision in Avengers Age of Ultron. Obviously he is previously connected to the role of Jarvis, but now possibly the Vision in the next Avengers film. Are you a fan of Paul Bettany?
I'm a fan of him. I'm not a fan of the movies he's in. He's in a lot of duds and like Legion and Priest. He's usually the best thing about bad movies sometimes, but I thought he's been awesome as Jarvis, and I really like this casting, and I see him really fitting into that role of Vision. So I'm kind of surprised that they're bringing him in for the next movie, just because it seems to come out a little bit out of nowhere, but I think the casting is spot on.
All right, and the next superhero stuff is all about Fantastic Four. Apparently Miles Teller, Emmy Rossum, and Kate Mara are testing for Fantastic Four. Looks like they're definitely going for a young group with this one. Do those names make you more or less interested in this project?
I'll give him points for ambition. It's a little odd seeing Fantastic Four that young, but since Spectacular Now, Miles Teller to me has me interested. Like I said, I thought in that awkward moment, I thought he was even really good in that. So his presence does have me intrigued.
It's also said that the villain they'll be going against in this film will be Doctor Doom. So we'll have to see who gets cast for that. I myself, it would take a whole lot to interest me in the Fantastic Four. So
yeah, they're and the rumor of Michael B. Jordan being in Michael B. Jordan being the Human Torch has been there for a while. So I guess if they have like Zac Efron as the Thing, they can have like that awkward moment reunion. But yeah, the Fantastic Four is kind of, they can be a dry team, so I can see why not being interested in. I think that's why they're going young, because it's maybe gonna help get rid of that image a little bit.
Here's one that I didn't think I would see connected as far as the superhero world. The Rock hinting at possible Green Lantern role. This could be reading a whole lot into nothing. Talking about Instagram and hashtags and this, that, and whatever, where he hashtag line here from him is Jon Stewart can still whoop Superman's ass. Maybe he's just making a comment. But people are connecting him to a Green Lantern role. Can you see him in that role?
Sure. I guess it would be kind of funny though, is if he's in that movie, he's gonna like tower over Superman, which would be a little weird.
Digital effects here and change people's.
Henry Cavill will have to like stand on a soapbox or something. I feel like they're just like The Rock is in like every franchise ever now. It's like, oh, we need more interest. We'll throw The Rock in. I do like The Rock. He's charming. He's fun. To me, I think if he's in that movie, like I think he's gonna overtake it, which could be a good thing. But if like the Green Lantern to me should that be that character? But I don't know. I wouldn't be like he can play if he's. I'm guessing he'd be Jon Stewart, who's like a former military person, and The Rock plays that role pretty well. So yeah, he's like someone said that he's like franchise Viagra, so I could see that happening. Yeah.
And, of course, the news that everyone has been talking about, that we are late to the game without having our episode last week, but we got to at least comment on it a tiny bit. Last superhero casting news of the day, and it's all about Batman versus Superman. We already knew that Ben Affleck would be playing the role of Batman, and it was confirmed that Jeremy Irons would be playing the role of Alfred. And then the news that Jesse Eisenberg would be cast as Lex Luthor.
Shocking.
Yikes. I like Jesse Eisenberg. I've liked him in certain roles. This is bizarre to me.
It does seem out of place at face value. It just doesn't seem like he fits that type at all. Like Lex Luthor we know and love, he doesn't really fit that character. Based on what I'm hearing and the direction that they're going, they want him younger. They want him around the same age as Superman, which he is. He's the same age as Henry Cavill, which you wouldn't think. They kind of, it seems like they're being influenced by Smallville in some ways with that, and he's supposed to be like this kid from the streets who grows up and becomes like a self-made man. And rumors he's going to be like a bald, like a shaved head, and not bald, but shaved head, and like with tattoos and stuff like that. So,
I guess I don't know. I guess my problem is more in just this, and I'm not a huge, obviously, Superman person. I don't know a ton about Lex Luthor or anything like that, but he iconically has a certain image. And you don't have to play that image. You can play a younger version of him. I have no problem in that. That we've seen younger versions of a lot of superhero characters. Just look at what the X-Men has done there, and they've very well pulled off younger versions of a lot of those characters without a hitch. To me, the leap of faith is there's no way, even if this is a young version of Lex Luthor, I can't picture him growing into someone that would fit that character.
Yeah, I heard someone. I can understand that, but I guess you look at it like if Lex Luthor was made today, he probably would be someone like a Mark Zuckerberg person, possibly. I don't think he's going to be like the Lex Luthor we know. He's going to be a lot different. I don't know.
It seems like they are definitely bucking the trend as far as they have this major film coming out that's going to be including a lot of iconic people that have been played by a lot of different actors, voiced by a lot of different actors, had a lot of different designs, looks, etc., all within a certain constriction there. And it just seems like they're like, you know what, to heck with what people expect. Every time we cast someone for this film, let's go against the trend, and I don't know if that's a good game to play.
Yeah, I mean it's it's one of those things, like if you're going to go that way, I mean maybe you're risking a lot, like you're asking a lot, and you're.
It reminds me of a certain Batman film from days of past.
Yeah, it could be like that,
but they could pull it off. I don't know.
I mean, it does seem like, based upon what I'm seeing, like Lex Luthor is not going to be a big role in this next movie, but maybe further down the line. I don't know. Like I give him, like I like some. I kind of, for me, I don't mind it when they completely change things and do their own thing, because I figure give it a few years, we're going to get a reboot and it's going to be back to normal anyways. Question is it going to work? Like, is this them just like? Are they throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Are they not really focusing on what they're doing, and they're just like, here's a vision, and then they get so far off that they're not even back into like making a Superman, Batman movie or what have you? But I don't know.
I guess if I'm putting stock in something at this point, and I have X amount of money and I have to buy stock, and it's either going to be in Marvel or DC right now, it's definitely all going towards Marvel. I am not chancing anything with what DC is doing right now.
No, I mean, DC is really great at making their fans upset. That's basically I kind of feel like that is the thing they're doing, though. They're chasing headlines, and that's their goal, is like kind of getting the movie in the public consciousness more than ever. And I think what worries me the most is the fact it's pushed back a year, and it's like what's going on here? It does seem like a gigantic mess that they can't get a hold of, and every time you think they're close to it, it's like something other crazy thing gets thrown in there. It's like, oh, by the way, we're casting Lady Gaga as Supergirl. So just throwing that out there. It's our new vision for the character.
It definitely seems like it was a runaway train that got a little too far ahead of them before they could reel it back in, and it would have been better to keep a lot of stuff more tight-lipped.
Yeah.
I think some more people could learn lessons. I think that's one thing that J.J. Abrams does well. Just kind of comparing this to another major film coming out, as the Star Wars thing is, yes, then, bit by bit we're learning stuff about that, but it seems like it's just so much more well thought out and planned and more methodical.
Yeah, like J.J. Abrams kind of dips his toe in the water, and then DC just jumps right in, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, we're doing this.
Yeah, jackknife into the pool,
Exactly.
into the deep end. Let's get away from the superhero stuff. Talk about some, I guess the superhero fans might be bored by this, but stuff that we might find a little more interesting in some casting news here. Apparently, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill are set to re-team up on a new biopic about the falsely accused Olympic bomber Richard Jewell back in the Atlanta Olympics in 1996. Just your thoughts in general of DiCaprio and Jonah Hill co-starring in another film.
I thought they were really worked well together in Wolf of Wall Street, so I'm for it. I'm liking Jonah Hill doing more dramatic roles because I assume that even be more dramatic than what he's done before.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of it too. I thought they worked very well together.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting it, but I think they did.
They were even really great on SNL when they were did a little skit
yeah.
together.
Yeah, I saw that too. And Matthew McConaughey continuing his desire apparently to be in some more serious films, and he has apparently signed on for Gus Van Sant's next film, entitled Sea of Trees. I don't know how much you've seen of that, or if you're a fan overall of Gus Van Sant. I can't remember if we've talked about him before or not together. But just your thoughts on kind of Matthew McConaughey's projection so far as an actor this last year and going into the future.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if Matthew McConaughey's in anything, I'm going to be checking it out. So, Gus Van Sant as director, he's hit or miss for me. Like he'll do some crazy things, like he did that shot-by-shot remake of Psycho, but then he'll do like a movie like Elephant, which I think is a fantastic movie. So he's one you never know what he's going to do. So I think you get a good performance out of McConaughey, and McConaughey can do no wrong right now. So let's keep that going.
From the synopsis of this film, it's about a man entering Mount Fuji's suicidal forest with the intention of committing suicide, and then he meets a Japanese man, Ken Watanabe, and who is having second thoughts about his own suicide, and the two embark upon a journey of reflection and survival in this forest.
Yeah, that sounds like a Gus Van Sant movie.
All right. Ben Wheatley has confirmed Tom Hiddleston for the High Rise film, which obviously the adaptation of J.G. Ballard's High Rise. So interesting to see Tom Hiddleston's projection as well. Thoughts on that film or his role in that?
I'm not really familiar with the source material much, so I can't say much except for the fact that Tom Hiddleston is again another. He's just a fun presence, so I would be interested in seeing that, but can't really give too much because I really don't know what it all entails. So.
All right, fair enough. And then just showing today here, this news article as we're recording this, some casting news on Terminator. Again, we've been getting a lot of this, but apparently the short list for Kyle Reese is down to 2. And the title of the film was going to be Terminator Genesis. So we got Kyle Reese down to 2, and that's, I don't know if I'm going to say the first name right, but Jay Courtney or Boyd Holbrook. And I'm not super familiar with either of these individuals. Holbrook has been seen in supporting roles in Milk, The Host, and Behind the Candelabra, as well as Jane Got a Gun, Gone Girl, and Courtney was in A Good Day to Die Hard and Jack Reacher, and he'll be in Divergent. So they would be alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger, as well as Jason Clarke as John Connor. What are your thoughts on either one of those? Are you familiar with either one of their work?
I think Courtney played John Connor's son in Good Day to Die Hard, and I wasn't very impressed with him there. I was a little disappointed because I thought like Jason Clarke was in the running for John Connor, and I thought he would be really
no,
good.
Jason Clarke is in the John Connor. I'm sorry, we're talking about the role for Kyle Reese.
Oh, Kyle Reese. Oh, geez, yeah. Yeah, only one I really familiar with is Courtney, and I wasn't really a fan of him in Good Day to Die Hard, though he wasn't too bad in Jack Reacher. He didn't really have a big part, but he was fine in that. So, and I think was in Spartacus or something like that before, one of those TV shows like Vikings or Spartacus or whatever.
Gotcha.
But yeah, sure. I really can't say much because I don't know either of them. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, moving on from all of that, just getting into some brief trailer talk before we get to our main attraction. Thanks for sticking with us through all these news stories. Like I said, apparently what we're learning here is even though January is not necessarily a good movie or good month for movies, that as soon as February hits, the news channels light up and we get all kinds of news. But some trailer talk. Start with the ones that you've seen, and then I'll kind of talk about a little of the ones that you haven't yet.
Okay. Well, there was a trailer, probably the biggest one that came out, which was for A Million Ways to Die in the West, the new movie by the creator of Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane. And I'm a fan of westerns, so I'm all for making more westerns. Like even if it is Seth MacFarlane, who I do like, my big hesitation with the film. I do think it looks pretty interesting. Is I don't know if I buy Seth MacFarlane in that role. That's my one beef. I think him as a side character, something like in Ted doing a voice, yeah, I get that, but I don't know about an on-screen role because he's not really handled that before. But
I can't help but think that this movie is gonna, and I don't think it's fair or not at all, but I can't help but think of the Maverick when I see this, and when I see the ideas of it or some of the little shots so far, like in the trailer, which kind of goes to your point, because in that it is a western that's completely making fun of itself and comedy full on, but there you have someone believable like a Mel Gibson playing the lead role in that time period. For those that have problems with Mel Gibson now, this is obviously before all that. So yeah, I don't know if he would necessarily be able to pull off that part, but if he can, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. The other ones I've seen, there's a new trailer for Sabotage, the new Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and I keep going back and forth with that movie. Like, part of me think it could be absolutely awful, but I don't know. I think it could be kind of fun too. I don't know. My issue is like that movie seems like a kind of like a realistic film or trying that approach, but Schwarzenegger is such a cartoon at times. I just don't know if he's going to fit into it very well. And the last one I saw was Alan Partridge with Steve Coogan, and I never watched the Alan Partridge show that's based upon, so I felt like I was a little bit out of it when it came to some of the stuff it was referencing, but I love Steve Coogan, and I think that's actually on demand right now, so I might check it out, but I'm just hesitant because I don't know like the source material.
Fair enough. I wasn't sure on that one too. I thought one that you might be interested to check out, which you'll have to watch when you get a chance, would be the trailer for Hector and the Search for Happiness. I know you're a fan of a couple of the different people that are involved in that, including Simon Pegg, Christopher Plummer's in that, Stellan Skarsgård. It looks like it could be interesting. But some of his films are hard to tell just based off a trailer on what exactly you're going to get. So that should be something that I'd be interested to see what your take is on that. We had a trailer for Sly Cooper, so fans of that video game, apparently that's one of the next video games that's going to get a movie treatment. Looked interesting, I guess. Joe, starring Nicolas Cage. That's one that I have a hard time here. He's an ex-con who finds himself in the role of being a role model for a 15-year-old boy whose father seems like a complete douchebag. So it's kind of this weird situation where you have an ex-con who's, it's almost, I guess it reminds me a little bit of Josh Brolin playing that role, but even though it's going to be a completely different film, not even close to the same type of plot or anything, but where we have an ex-con who's in that position to kind of play a positive role in someone's life and kind of dealing with a little bit of maybe of coming of age as well. That movie looked like it had potential, but again, Nicolas Cage is someone that is so hit or miss sometimes.
Mainly missed recently. So
yes, yeah. That is true. Stalingrad, which looked somewhat interesting for this perspective, and for me as a history buff and someone who likes war films, etc. The reason Stalingrad appeals to me is because it's a little different than what we usually get. Every time we get a war film, it seems like it's either from the side of the U.S. or it's from another side of someone who is dealing with the U.S. And this is depicting a battle that really had nothing to do with the U.S. This is Russia and Germany. And for me, that's kind of a different take now, and it seems like it could be something that would be interesting as far as World War II events, seeing something that was from that side of things, and then the Battle of Stalingrad between the Russians and the Germans. I don't know. Does it have the potential to be an epic classic war film along the same lines of Saving Private Ryan? Possibly. And it could also be absolutely crap. So it's going to be hard, but I will say that I am at least a little bit intrigued just to see, something outside and away from what was going on with the U.S. in World War II.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check those out for sure. And I'll post those on the website so people can check them out themselves.
Yeah, and then just a couple other ones I wanted to bring up real quickly. Enemy, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. He's somewhat becoming someone who I will give a shot to regardless. And it's also dealing with the director of the Prisoners film from last year. I could not get a real good feel for that based on the trailer, so I'll have to kind of hold out judgment on that one. And then the one that I did want to bring up was the trailer that I saw for The Fault in Our Stars, which was one of the films that I listed as one of my anticipated films for 2014. Obviously another coming-of-age film from the person that gave us 500 Days of Summer, as well as The Spectacular Now, starring Shailene Woodley. And what you didn't see, I didn't see this in basically most of the posters or any of the stuff that I was looking at. I kind of just listed this based on her and the director. But it looks like it could be an interesting one, maybe a little bit of a tugging at the heartstrings or whatever. It seems like she's playing an individual who has a major health issue, and that she meets somebody at a cancer support group. Obviously, she's a young individual that's dealing with cancer, and it seems like it's kind of going through her relationship with this person, etc. It definitely added a different level to it, and I'm definitely interested to see how she does with that role, because she's played certain roles so far as the films I've seen her in, and this looks like something, although in the same vein, a little bit of different take for her, so I'm even more interested than I was before on this one.
Very nice. Very nice.
So that's it. So you can check those out, and like Dan said, we'll have links to some other trailers too that you can check out.
Yeah, and you can get that at geekcastradio.com. And we're just going to take a break here, and when we come back, we'll be discussing George Clooney's latest film, Monuments Men. We'll see you in a bit.
You want to get into the war?
Monuments Men.
I'm to put a team together and do our best to protect buildings, bridges, and art before the Nazis destroy everything.
How many men?
6.
Jesus.
Well, with you at 7.
That's much better. So you want to go into a war zone with some architects and artists and tell our boys what they can and cannot blow up.
That's right.
Aren't we a little old for that?
Yes. We go through basic, and then we wait for orders.
Basic?
A little help.
Basic training. Oh, boy.
I hold my head up just enough to see the sky. And when we go,
If you destroy an entire generation of people's culture, it's as if they never existed.
We got company. Frank, we gotta go!
That's what Hitler wants. And it's the one thing we can't allow.
So we get to shoot some Nazis?
it's your responsibility now.
I've never shot at anyone before.
He really wanted it all.
And we better get it back.
What have you got? I seem to have stepped on a landmine.
Why'd you do something like that?
What do you got?
Lieutenant here seems to have found himself on top of an unexploded mine.
Why would you do that?
You all been spending too much time together.
All right, and welcome back. Today we'll be discussing Monuments Men. It's directed by George Clooney, starring George Clooney, and pretty much everyone ever else. George Clooney, Matt Damon, Cate Blanchett, Bill Murray, John Goodman, and a host of others, including Desjardins, the former Oscar winner. Back when we did our last episode, we talked about our most anticipated movies of 2014, and surprisingly, we're already on one that was in the top 10, and Monuments Men was both on mine and as well as Kevin's top movies that we're looking forward to. So with that in mind, Kevin, I'm curious, did it live up to your expectations?
I'm going to say yes and no. I have been somewhat listening to a little bit of the critiques and whatnot, and I'm going to say my issues. I don't have like major issues with the film, so in that way, it did live up to it. I think it could have been even, it had the potential to be even better given the cast and the situation and everything like that. I don't have the same problem everybody else has with it, so I actually do rank this one somewhat well. I mean, I don't think it has much of a shot of being in like my top 10 list or anything like that by the end of the year, but for my own personal taste, I enjoyed the film.
Okay. I'll say when I first saw the film and I walked out of it, I was like, okay, like I was thinking star rating and like, all right, where would I rank that? And it got a thing in my head and I'm like, okay, I liked it. I liked it. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, what did I like about it? And I kept going in my head trying to find things that I really liked about it. And I kept finding it harder and harder to do that. And I realized like it was one of those things, as the more I thought about it, the more I looked back on it and kind of analyzed the film, like the more issues I had. And like, I don't necessarily think it's a bad movie by any means. I just do think I would call this somewhat of a disappointment. I was, again, very much anticipating it. I love George Clooney as a director. Good Night and Good Luck as a movie I adore a great deal. I even liked Ides of March. And I just thought he had such a strong directorial sense. He's got an eye for the camera. He knows how to bring a lot of style. And with this cast and the idea of these men going across Europe to try to save infamous monuments and art and things of that nature, I thought like, okay, there's a lot of potential here for him to really bring in his style as a director. And I guess that's the one thing that maybe bugged me the most, was that I just felt at a directorial standpoint that it was just kind of bland. Like there was for a movie about art, about saving art, that it was lacking in style for a great deal. It just felt like it was just point and shoot, and there was not him bringing in anything extra like that I was hoping for. And I mean, that's my biggest issue with it. And I do think there are some moments I really enjoyed. Like I love the opening when they all like come together. If it reminded me like of like a Dirty Dozen movie or something like that, with the theme song and all these people coming, bringing together this team. And I do think the team, there are moments that like they do get to shine some, but I just thought with that cast that there would be more standout moments, more standout performances. Like I don't feel like that happened. Like I can't really point to a lot of moments that stuck out to me, or overall just looking at all these actors and seeing like, okay, well, I just felt like he did not get as much as he could have as a director. Clooney did, and I think maybe there was just too much, and I don't know. It just to me I just feel like this movie could have been so much better than it is, and I guess it's hard to do that to a film. It's almost unfair because you're placing upon unfair expectations, but it's hard not to when you just look at what's involved.
I think for me, he was making some conscious choices about how he wanted to attack this. Obviously, again, like we talked about last year, somewhat of a trend recently where we're doing a lot of films and seeing a lot of films based on somewhat, whether loosely or strictly, based on some real life events and some stuff that actually happened. And I think what his dilemma was, as far as everything that I've been reading, hearing, listening to, etc., was with the subject material that we're talking about. You're making a story about this group of individuals, tasked with saving the culture, saving the art of generations here during obviously a time of war. And just given that, you can approach that in a lot of different ways. You can approach it like we might expect like a Steven Spielberg to approach it, and really get into trying to, get to the emotional parts of it and really tug at, your heartstrings or whatever. You can go that route and really try to go epic with it, in a way, super serious, super, that direction. You can go somewhat the way that you were kind of alluding to in a way, since you're doing a piece about art, and you can go very stylistic with it and very kind of, art imitating art, I guess, as far as that route, and try to, play to those chords. I think what his issue was is he's tackling a subject that on one hand is dealing with a group of individuals who obviously are not soldiers, who are tasked with this art expedition, and you have these major stars that are cast in these roles, and you can get somewhat. I mean, if you look at it, you got John Goodman and Bill Murray, who, although can do very serious stuff, also are very genius with their comedic talents. And do you want to go full on and let them really explore and be funny as you have these groups paired off, in these twos and et cetera, and as you have these older, out of shape people acting like soldiers, et cetera, you can go funny and go that route, but then you're also balancing the fact that this is a World War II film, and we're dealing with the atrocities that is, Hitler and Holocaust and all this other stuff, and it's just such a fine line you have to walk, where you can go too serious, or you can go not serious enough and then get blasted for making light of a super serious historical event. So I don't know. I understand. I'm not saying you're saying any of this. I'm saying just based on some of the backlash I've heard is a lot about the tone and a lot about the feel and the approach. But I don't know if I can fault him for making choices that I might have made other choices, but can I fault him for making the choices he did when he's balancing such a delicate line as far as how you approach this subject matter?
Yeah, and I mean that's obviously a little difficult because you are dealing. There is a comedic sensibility to what they're doing, but I think there is a huge. I think that the comedic side is really a small portion. I think maybe people thought there would be more comedy to it because if you look at the cast, Bill Murray, John Goodman, this is going to be really funny, and the comedy is there, but it's very limited. I would say it's far more sentimental and far more dramatic than that. There's George Clooney does like a lot of like voiceover of the seriousness of the situation, and I guess you did talk about the fine line, and I kind of feel like it didn't really walk that fine line very well at times. There are moments where I almost thought, oh, this is a comedic moment, but it ended up being really serious without spoiling anything. But there's a death of a certain character, and the way that that death happens is almost slapstickish in a way, where like they stumble upon this situation that they get caught in the middle of, and I almost thought like they're approaching it as more of a comedic side, but then it's suddenly no, this is actually a seriously sad moment. So that was a little bit jarring to me, and then there are other moments like that too, where it's like, okay, this is it. It's being more dramatic now, but that's just like Go ahead.
To me, I think what it boils down to best is like I'm not necessarily faulting him for not necessarily knowing which way to go with it, and to kind of always be conscious of I can't go too far this direction, I can't go too far that direction. But I think in doing so, he never went any direction.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
He was balancing so many different things that it ended up not being any of those things that he could have gone. Like, I think it would be better if you just go all in and make it a completely serious film, or you go all in and make it. I'm not talking about like Inglourious Basterds. Just we're not even gonna. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying anything bad about that movie at all. But I'm saying, go totally that route, or go in this, kind of wry humor route. Like, there was a lot of different ways you could have gone, and I think it would have been better just to pick one and go with it. But instead, he was going back and forth and doing like a little bit of humor and a little bit of stylistic stuff on this part, and then having seriousness on this part. Like you said, with the voiceovers, etc. And it leaves you not knowing how you're supposed to be feeling about certain events. Am I taking all of this, somewhat? I'm not going to let myself get invested too much in this because it's going to be a little bit. I'm going to take the approach of this whole film as lighthearted in a way, and kind of take that approach and not let myself get sucked into it, or and I can do that at times when you have Bill Murray and John Goodman playing off of different characters, and you're like, oh, I can just take this as almost it has like a feel of not really Wes Anderson, but something like that, where you're like, okay, I'll just go along for the ride. But then, as you're getting ready to go along for the ride, then he hits you with something serious.
Yeah.
Or he hits you with something that you just can't ignore, as far as the historical aspect of it. And so it kind of was a tug of war with yourself on what type of movie am I watching, and how do I let myself get invested in this film one way or the other.
Yeah, I think part of that too was like a lot of the film just felt there wasn't like a lot of connecting tissue to. Because what you had is a lot of these Monuments Men got split up, and they were all in these different parts doing different things. And I don't know. I think that transition hurt in that aspect, because you're dealing with a certain character, and they're dealing with something that's maybe a little bit more comedic, not as serious. And then you're now onto another character who is now fighting for his life, and it's like, wait, hold on, I was just laughing, and now I'm gonna worry about this person getting killed. And I guess, I don't know. To me, it was almost like a lifelessness to it. Like, in a way, I just felt like there should be more happening, but there isn't. I don't know. It just seemed to. Slowly...
It also made it somewhat hard to follow. It's not like I ever had a problem with like what. Like the chain of events that was happening, but it made it hard to follow in a way that, they'll map this out, and they're like, okay, you're going to go way over here to this country, and then you're going to go over to this country, and you're going to go into a third different country, and then we're going to visit all of these different things, even though they all feel like they're taking place in the same place.
Yeah.
And then we're all going to be together, and there's no sense of the time or the fact that these people were not, if they're going based on how they map stuff out, they're not anywhere near each other. And it just seemed like it was meet up and huddle up and see what was going on, and then go from there. And then again, they're in random different places. Like, as far as the time and the place goes, you don't have a good feeling for what's happening in that respect, especially since for all intents and purposes, if you take away a couple scenes where they actually have maps out, you could be convinced that all this is happening in one city.
Yeah. And especially, like, you look at Matt Damon spends a lot of time in Paris with Kate Blanchett's character, and that entire storyline subplot almost feels like inconsequential to like everything else that's going on. Even at the end, it seemed like it didn't, like, it was all for not that much. I mean, I guess in hindsight, it did lead to something very important, but it just, I don't think it expressed its importance a great deal. Like, that entire third of the film just didn't feel like there was much there. I was curious what you thought about that, the Matt Damon, Cate Blanchett, like, little subplot.
I thought I enjoyed their performances, and I enjoy Matt Damon when he's on screen, etc. But I guess my initial reaction to both of their appearance in this film was that they were underused, in a way that I expected them to be more of a part of the entire thing. Maybe the trailer misled me in a way, but it was almost like you were showing all these people, and you showed John Goodman, and you show Bill Murray, and you show George Clooney and Matt Damon, and then the other individuals, and then you show Cate Blanchett, and it made it seem like she was going to be along for the ride and involved in this more like an active participant. And then I got the feel that Matt Damon was going to be more involved with the other individuals, even though I'm not saying he wasn't, but it almost like it removed those two for a good portion. And like you said, although yes, they do play a part, you could almost do the movie without them.
Yeah.
You could do most of the stuff that happens without having to have that story. I'm not saying it was a bad story, even though I don't know, it didn't really go anywhere, but I don't know. I just, like you said, I do feel like the potential is there to do even more. That being said, I'm not going to say one bad thing about the performances, especially, I know it's a broken record, but Bill Murray and John Goodman were great.
Yeah, I guess my own. I don't think I had any issues with the performance. I just kind of wish they had more. Like they were given better material to work with.
Yeah, I'm just saying you could give them like a note written on a piece of toilet paper. Somehow they're like, oh, okay, I'll do this and make it look good.
I mean, Bill Murray had some of my favorite moments. Like there's a scene with, like I guess you can call it like the John Wayne scene where they stumble upon like a lost German soldier, which I thought was pretty good. And I thought a pretty strong moment in like during the Battle of the Bulge. There's a like unexpected gift from a family member that you see, and I think he sold that moment really well.
Did that moment and did that scene, since you brought it up, you'll know what I'm talking about, and it doesn't have to spoil anything, and not that there's anything to spoil anyways, but did that scene not scream to you that, man, if this film would have came out when it was originally scheduled to, this scene would resonate even more?
It probably would, yeah. I didn't even think of it at the time, but that's a good point. But if you look at the movie and what it centers on, I mean, a big thing I think it kind of points out is like the price of that you're willing to pay to save art or save culture. And I think the movie is very evident that it knows the answer to that question. Is it worth risking lives to save pieces of art, some of which are historic. I mean, historical elements for sure. And it seems very willing to say yes. It's willing to save those. It's willing to do that. Do you think it would be more interesting if it kind of juggled that question a little bit more instead of just kind of blatantly knowing like yes, without a doubt, it was the right thing to do?
I mean, I think. Yeah, if it was a little more ambiguous, if it was a little more up for debate, possibly. If there were some more decisions, I think, obviously they do touch on it because there's death involved. There's the political side that's touched on. I think it would have been maybe even a bit more effective if they would have put somebody in a position where they almost had to choose within that film. One or the other. Like if you take a George Clooney or a Matt Damon's character and like, even something as simple as they literally have to pick, I can save this art piece or I can, put one of my, colleagues at, grave risk. And I'm not saying they didn't come close to doing that at times, but I'm saying if there was a more of a definite moment where you kind of felt that someone really had to weigh that decision, when it boils right down to it, do I ensure my friend is safe or do I ensure this piece of art is safe?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have an issue with like them answering that question. I guess the fact that like none of the characters really question it at all. I mean, it could be the fact that.
Well, and not to interrupt you, but my point is not only do they not question it, but they're never forced into a situation where they have to.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that would have maybe made it a little bit like richer in the material. I think it just, Clooney makes his point known and his opinion known pretty quickly. And I guess I just think it may be a little bit more interesting if they kind of explored it a little bit further and maybe thought, you like you said, put people in that situation where, yeah, they kind of have to maybe second think what they're doing because maybe it's not worth it. But not saying that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I think it avoids a certain element that would have given you another layer, because what it does is it presents you with a movie that gives you the question, okay, what is art important enough to possibly sacrifice life for? Okay, that's a completely different question than if they would have kind of put that in a juxtaposition of, well, now we have these guys who signed up to do exactly that, but when push comes to shove, is there a moment where they choose the person they've been going on this ride with and learning about their family and learning about them as a person, when it comes down to sacrificing them or not, all of a sudden, this question that seems easy to answer when we're just talking about it as a question, when it comes down to real life situation, all of a sudden becomes a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I think that if you were forced to ask them, and then you have one of these characters that's actually signed up to do exactly that, now going against that some way, or maybe saying, in this situation, it's not worth it. It would have added another element to me. I don't know. It just would have made it a little bit more something where it's not so cut and dry.
Yeah.
It's easy to say. It's easy to say, yeah, art's worth it and culture's worth it, and all this is, he's trying to destroy this and we have to, save this. That's easy to say. It's easy to say it's easy to take stances when you're just answering a question like that.
Yeah, and I think it frames it the way George Clooney frames that art, because it's brought up in the movie itself, with characters and I think the way that Clooney frames it within the film, there's no question, but I just think I have no issue with a movie taking a stance on something, but I guess if you're unable to even recognize the other side and maybe think, okay, is there legitimacy into maybe, I don't know, not going this route, I think it strengthens your argument if you at least approach it in some ways, because then you're not just ignoring it and just not even questioning it. It's just almost like blind faith. But yeah, I mean, I feel with a film like this, it's hard because I did have really high expectations, so it's almost like, okay, now you're just sitting back and looking, hey, impress me, and I don't know. I just, at the end of the day, I wanted more from it, and that maybe maybe a rewatching it again. I could maybe appreciate what it was trying to do, but on a first time watch, it just wasn't there for me. So,
I mean, I don't say I disliked it. I enjoyed it. I was able to still enjoy it, and just see what it is, and kind of just to see what Clooney's vision was for it, and just kind of take it from that, and to see this other side of this true event that basically I didn't know a whole lot about. So, I did enjoy it, and it was entertainment. But if I'm going to put a critical eye on it, I can find stuff that I think could have been better. And, I would have liked to see that cast used in a more effective way, if that's the right term for that. But I don't want to completely kind of crap on it and say that I didn't like it, because I did enjoy myself during it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a film I've been struggling with since I've seen it too. It's just when I look back and I'm like, okay, did I like it, or I still don't know if I really made up my mind if I really liked it or not. I really want to like it, and it's one of those things where sometimes I think we put so high of expectations on something, and it's like, okay, I like that movie, and then when I go back, okay, what did I like about it? I'm like, well, there's this thing. I did like the music to it. I did, like I said, there were certain montages I really liked, certain scenes that were really well done. I don't know. The George Clooney in this I thought was good, but he wasn't on his best for me. I mean, part of it that he's such a small. He's almost not even the biggest portion of the film. He comes in here and there. I think he comes in almost to a certain moment happens, and he comes in to kind of explain the importance of what just happened, and then he comes back and he leaves, and he comes back and then he goes after it. But I don't know. And I guess I would say this for it. It does have me really curious to know how much of this is actually factual, how much is it true, and how much has been changed. And
yeah.
So anything else you want to say about Monuments Men?
No, I'd just be interested to hear other people's takes on it. Like I said, that my problem isn't so much with the feel for what he went for. I mean, I understand that it was a choice, so I'm not going to fault him for that, even if it might not have been the feel that I would have gone for. But I'm interested to see what other people think about it as well.
Yeah, definitely let us know. You can leave comments on geekcastradio.com, and at the end of the show, we'll go over all the different ways you can leave us feedback. There's millions and millions of different ways. So I guess before we move on, I guess we should give our star rating. So out of 5 stars, Kev, what are you going to give Monuments Men?
Like you said, this one's a tough one. I'm going to have to do some more thinking about it. May even have to do a rewatch. But I'm not going to say I disliked it. Right now I'm sitting somewhere in the 3 range.
Okay. And like I said, I'm debating this as I'm saying it out loud. And this could all put this thing, it's open up to change. But at the end of the day, if I have to give positive or negative, I think I would err more on the negative side, but not by much. So I'm going to give it a 2.5, a very strong 2.5. It's like a 2.74. So it's possible to be bumped up on a rewatch when I kind of can maybe just look at what it's attempting and not.
See, I think that's the thing, is separating what you want it to be, and then to view it just as how it was intended to be. I guess I don't know, and I'm not saying.
Yeah, and I think I'm guilty of it on this time. I'm good at not doing that, but for some reason for this film, I guess it was not the movie I was expecting, and doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie, but maybe that's what's kind of adjusting my perspective on it. So,
all right.
So let's take a look at what else is coming out this for next week for DVD and Blu-ray. Actually, it's not, for theater for this time of year, it's not too bad. Obviously, the big release is the new RoboCop remake. So we'll be talking about that next week, most likely. You also have Endless Love with Valentine's Day coming up. You're going to have that. Also, Kevin Hart in another movie about last night, so I'm sure that's going to make a lot of money. And also Winter's Tale with Colin Farrell and Russell Crowe. And I'm surprised that movie is not getting, they're not... You think with those two actors and that story, it would be a bigger deal, but it doesn't seem like it's really getting a huge marketing push. So,
right.
Do you think any of those movies have a chance to beat Lego Movie in the box office?
No. If there was one that would have a chance, no, they're not, because they're all. First of all, obviously it's a kids' film, it's an animated film, so it's going to go across the board to kids everywhere, which is a huge audience. RoboCop is going to appeal to a certain demographic, which is going to be a completely separate demographic that Endless Love is going to appeal to, which, again, in a way is going to be a separate demographic that Winter's Tale, even though you can kind of somewhat say Winter's Tale and Endless Love, there might be some crossover there, it's still, to me, 2 separate demographics. And I feel like they're all appealing to different groups of people, so they'll all do decent, quote, on decent, because we're not going to say Lego Movie decent, but I still think Lego Movie, with its wide appeal, is going to reign supreme at least another week or 2.
Do you think will the power of Kevin Hart beat the power of RoboCop?
A whole nother demographic that I was leaving out. That's an interesting one. It's the interesting thing this week is really the number 2 spot. Yeah. Because you have Kevin Hart and his legions of fans on one hand. You have RoboCop with its blockbuster appeal, I guess, if you want to call it that, on another hand. And then you have, a possible teen, young, adult female crowd that, who knows, maybe they'll go crazy after Endless Love. I would say A Winter's Tale is going to be the loser out of that group, but I'm not saying it's going to be the worst film out of that group. It could end up being the best film out of the group, but I don't think that, I think that appeals to a little bit more of a, like I said, a different audience than those other ones, and I don't think they go see films that quite as much as these other ones. So yeah, it might be interesting to see number 2. I would expect between RoboCop and About Last Night and Endless Love. I don't know how do you see it stacking up?
I think RoboCop's going to be number 2. I just think that's my just gut reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't know, it's Endless. I mean, it is Valentine's Day weekend, so that does have a lot going.
And the trailers for Endless Love, I mean, although for us looking for potential top 10 material, we're going to kind of scoff at it, I guess. But for what it is and the who it's going after, the trailers don't look awful. As far as I don't see it I don't see the group of people that movie is aimed for, seeing the trailers and saying, eh. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like you have a film like we just said with I, Frankenstein, or with Vampire or whatever, or some of these films going out there where you see the trailers and you're saying, you know what, I think even the audience that likes those types of movies is going to see through this one.
Yeah.
I don't see Endless Love being in that situation. I see it, from the trailers, it looks like it might be something that resonates with the group they're going after.
Yeah, it can get like that Nicholas Sparks crowd.
Right.
I mean, if I had to put money on it, my guess is probably About Last Night's going to be number 2, just because I think it has a dramatic appeal. You do have, it's a comedy, you know, it's Valentine's Day weekend, so people are going to want that date night appeal. But RoboCop is also an IMAX, so it's got a bigger ticket price. So
I love how you got all this stuff kind of geared towards Valentine's Day, and then alongside it you have a RoboCop.
Which is really probably, you know, maybe he finds love too. It could be a love story. So we don't know.
Robo-love.
Exactly. And also DVD Blu-ray, not that bad of a week either. Some interesting stuff coming out. All Is Lost, the Robert Redford film. The Armstrong Live, the documentary about Lance Armstrong, obviously. Best Man Holiday. The Counselor, the infamous Counselor from last year. 2 films that we talked about, The Counselor and Ender's Game, both coming out this weekend. And not a new release, but for animated fans, The Jungle Book is finally coming in the Blu-ray. And Wakata, I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but I've heard really great things about that as well. But you think you'll be picking up any of those?
I will watch All Is Lost at some point. I don't know if I'll be red boxing it or if I'll be whatever. I'll find a way to watch that somehow, and I probably will pick up Jungle Book on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I will too. I've gone back and forth regarding All Is Lost. I think that's one I'll wait on buying. It's a movie I greatly enjoyed. It wasn't my top 10, but I'm like, I don't know if it's a not in a bad way. It's a tough movie to get through just because it's it's draining in some way. So I don't know if I have a desire to see it, and I will definitely not be buying The Counselor. So don't have any.
But if you're really interested in seeing a bad film or seeing one of the most talked about scenes of the film, go ahead and check it out. Just don't pay money for it. Find a way to do it for very cheap.
Probably YouTube it by now.
Yeah.
And back finishing off with our credit conversation, our feedback from 2 weeks ago. Feels like years ago, but back last episode we asked you some films you're looking forward to in 2014. A lot of people looking for a lot of things, and one that really stuck out to me was one that I missed completely, and I wish I mentioned it, but I appreciate Insurgent Cinema making a mention of it, and that's the movie The Trip to Italy. We talked about Steve Coogan earlier, and I don't know if you ever saw The Trip with Steve Coogan. That's a pretty funny film. It's actually in England, it was released as a TV series, but it came over here as a movie, and now they're making a sequel called The Trip to Italy. It's literally just them traveling across. The trip was them traveling across the United Kingdom, like going to different restaurants, and they're both comedians. It was like a road trip film that was fun to watch. And then he also mentioned The Lobster, which is a movie from the guy who did Dogtooth, which is an interesting film to say the least. For those that have seen that, that's on Netflix. It's kind of out there, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So I appreciate Insurgent Cinema mentioning those because they were both off my radar. But any comments from last week at all strike you?
Obviously, we had a few people mention, like we expected, Hobbit and Transformers as being films that we kind of somewhat completely left off of our list. That was to be expected. A lot of people excited for Godzilla.
Yeah.
So I was interested to see the number of people that were really looking forward to that one. A lot of people agreeing with a lot of the films we had on there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how this year plays out.
Definitely. So far, we have one down in our most anticipated. So hopefully it goes a little bit better. I think it will. But so the question for next week, unfortunately, a little bit more somber of a question, but it seems fitting considering the news of Philip Seymour Hoffman passing. Curious to hear what your favorite performances are, your favorite films. Let us know in our comment section. What stands out for you. If you want specific scenes, what about his career did you really appreciate? Because there's a huge amount to talk about. So
agreed, and I kind of wanted to also. Kind of in a closing way for the show, I guess in a way go for full circle with the the somber news, since we waited a day to record this, we actually had another passing, which I realized that Philip Seymour Hoffman is a bigger name as far as modern day films and whatnot. But I wanted to not go without mention this other passing, because for me, this individual had a big part in kind of giving me a love for film from a very young age. It was just kind of like a family tradition of ours. My mom, my dad passed when I was really young, so it ended up being something that originally, like my dad, my mom, and my sister and myself, we'd watch films or watch, usually it ended up being like a movie or something on TV at night, and we'd either have popcorn or ice cream or something. It was just kind of a little thing that we would do. And then it obviously ended up being my mom and my sister and I doing that a lot. And my mom was a big fan of this individual, and we ended up, I probably saw most of her filmography, I guess, as a young person. And I guess it dates me in a way, because I guess this is more so before my time, and maybe it's odd for me to have enjoyed all this, but I really instilled in me just a joy for entertainers and for people who can just do everything, sing, dance, act, and talk about someone that had a unique history as far as what she was able to do. And I'm talking about Shirley Temple, who passed, I believe she was 85. And of course she was in a lot of stuff as a child star: Curly Top, The Littlest Rebel, Poor Little Rich Girl, Wee Willie Winky. There was just Heidi, Susanna of the Mounties. There was a ton of stuff that she did, but I think the impressive thing for me is there was first of all, the time period in which she was a star, which was basically heading into the Great Depression. She was born in 1928, and most of her stuff was done before she was a teenager. So we're talking about the 30s and an interesting time there. But there was a 4-year period in her life as a kid that she was the top box office earner in all of Hollywood. As a child, 4 years, going against some very iconic names, and I don't know. I just wanted to bring her up because I thought she's overlooked by today's generation, and I think some of those films actually, even though they're so old, do stand up. And a child star who was able to do it without getting completely messed up in the process. She went on to do all kinds of political stuff as far as ambassadorships and different kind of stuff like that. But I just wanted to mention her because, she played a big part in kind of instilling a love for movies as a child in myself that would later blossom into, all kinds of different types of films that I enjoyed. So a couple of people that we lost over the last couple weeks so far.
Yeah, definitely. My mom, too, was a huge fan of Shirley Temple, so I, like yourself, watched a lot of her movies growing up as a kid. A lot of tap dancing, but yeah, she was extremely talented. To be that young and that successful and still be sane afterwards is pretty incredible.
Well, and the other thing is she was young and successful in a way that people that she was doing it in a way that wasn't, she didn't come across as this annoying, pageant, beauty queen type, like they have those little Miss beauty pageants where she could have completely been like something like that, because she was just this little cute little girl that everybody adored and whatnot, but she did it in a way that didn't come across as annoying and conceited.
Yeah, so, there was always an earnestness to her, for sure.
And just for her signature song, "Animal Crackers in My Soup," that's pretty good.
Yes.
And Curly Top. So, all right.
But there are many different ways to get in contact with us. You can call the voicemail line at 502-526-5821. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Visit the episode post at geekcastradio.com. Also on Facebook, we're at Geekcast Radio Network, or on Twitter at Geekcast Radio with the hashtag MWIRE. And what is your Twitter name?
Optimus Solo.
And I'm at Movie Revolt. And remember, for all things movies, keep tuned to MWIRE Weekly. We'll see you next week.